Can a holiday, even a seemingly perfect holiday, end someone's relationship? Well, thanks to one of my favorite Reddit stories, I have an illustrated version of how that is true. Relationships can end on the road, and we know that instinctively. We've all had friends whose relationships have taken a turn for the worse, an argument that's spiraled out of control. But on the other hand, we've also got friends who they had something terrible happen on their holiday. Broken leg, car broke down. But their reaction to it was that they came away knowing that they'd found their soulmate. And a lot of us, we want to be like that couple. I'm a counselor and a psychotherapist, and I'm often asked, how can we be like that couple who gets stronger when they travel? Now, some counselors and therapists, they use video clips, they use bits of movies or their favorite TV show to illustrate some of these ideas to help make a safe space where we can talk about the behavior of two actors role-playing with a bit of emotional space and depth so we don't feel too hurt or stung or take it too personally when we take apart their behavior. But for me, I love Reddit stories. I find them real earthy, real gritty, and I love looking at the comments and seeing how the rest of the universe has reacted to the behavior that's described on the page. So, can a holiday end a relationship? Absolutely yes. But I want to walk through this story, which doesn't end well, but which I think shows a lot of the things that I raise as a counselor and a psychotherapist who works with men, couples, and women about how to be more mindful when they travel, how to travel with success, and how to travel in a way that strengthens a relationship. It goes to a big question that I see come up a lot, which is, how do I show up as a man when I travel with my wife or my girlfriend? How do I impress her if it's my first trip abroad with her? What kind of skills do I need to have? How do I look like a competent guy when I travel? And that's come up in sessions I've had with single men about to go on their first trip with their girlfriend, and it's come up with husbands who are planning for their 20th wedding anniversary. It's really important, it seems, to us as guys to be a competent traveler. And I'll definitely talk about that. What does the perfect holiday even mean for us? And this is one of those stories that's kind of obvious in a way that makes us see the wood for the trees. We can see what's gone wrong, and it can kind of help us maybe see if we've ever been a little bit lost like this poster from this story was in the story. So let's dive on in. But first, let me point out some obvious points here. I am not your counselor. I'm not your psychotherapist, and I'm certainly not the counselor of the person who wrote this story. I am not the counselor, and I've never met the ex-girlfriend. So I'm looking at this a few steps away. Now, if this was something that happened to a client of mine, as a counselor, we would go through the story and we'd have what's called unconditional positive regard. We would put ourselves in the shoes of the person, of our client. We would really listen to them. We would be there with them with a lot of empathy. But I'm not wearing that hat today. So we can be judgmental of the behavior. We won't judge the people, but we'll judge the behaviors. And we can do something fun and lighthearted, like take this relationship story and put the behaviors through a relationship passport control. We can look at some of the behaviors and think that is a green stamp. It is approved. We want that. We want that around us, around people that we care about. It's a good behavior. Or on the other hand, we can say that is a terrible behavior. We can just send that shit back on the next flight home, passport and visa rejected. Get out of here. So let's go through the story, tally up some of the behaviors at the end, and see how it fits. And I hope it helps you ask some questions about what do you want to be like when you next travel with your wife or your girlfriend. So to the story. The story is short and simple. It starts off with someone who describes himself as a hermit. They describe themselves as a homebody. But something changed dramatically. It changed their life. They fell in love. And if you've ever fallen in love, you know what I'm talking about. If you have not fallen in love yet, well, there are so many movies and books and songs about how love changes us and our priorities in life. And for our original poster, their priorities changed. They started working harder, saving harder, because they wanted to do a grand gesture. The kind of grand gesture that you see in a Disney movie almost. The big trip to impress the girlfriend and then live happily ever after. We can relate to that, I'm sure. He then starts to listen to his girlfriend. And if you paid attention to me just now, I said the word listen with a bit of a funny voice because there's listening and then there's listening. And No therapist or counselor is ever going to say, don't listen to your wife or girlfriend. But maybe don't listen the way that this guy did the listening. He listened like some kind of Soviet surveillance equipment. He listened kind of like a malware keystroke logger or a Google search algorithm thing. Because every time she spoke about her dreams to travel, he just kind of recorded it in his head. And then he built the dream itinerary based on all of her preferences. A lot like a kind of Google search algorithm, right? So he assembles this behind the scenes, and then 3 years into the relationship, boom, he presents it to her. Babe, I've planned this trip to Japan where you've always wanted to go. And I think I know all the places you want to see and all the things you want to do, so let's go and do this thing. Now, we don't really know how she reacted to that grand announcement, but the story then picks up in Japan, where something inexplicable happens to the original poster. So they get to Japan, they get through passport control, and then he describes it. It's as if my girlfriend had a personality transplant. She's a whole different person in Japan. She's complaining and whiny and upset. Nothing seems to impress her, and in fact, the more that he tries to show that he's competent with the train timetables, and the more that he tries to show what's going on, the more she pushes back, and the more she complains and grumbles. And he describes it as if the volume has only increased and gotten louder on the trip. And in the story, he describes how he is indeed very competent at getting around. He's got his travel app, he's memorized some of the train lines. And I love the story for this because for a lot of us guys, I'm not sure what you're like, but me definitely, if you ask me what does it take to be a competent guy when you travel, there's some pretty cliched male competencies which might come top of mind. For me, it'd be things like, can I swear in the local language? Can I drive a car with the steering wheel on the wrong side of the road, their side of the road? Do I roughly know the layout of the city if I got lost? Kind of very Jason Bourne, Secret Service, secret agent kind of stuff. But for a lot of guys, that's what we think we need to do to be super competent. And I kind of imagine this original poster really knocking the ball out the park with this, being that guy who at the train station is like, well, our train will be here in 3, 2, 1, behind me now. There we go, like door number 5. This guy, the picture of what guys think an awesome travel companion would look like. But as awesome as he is, it's not working. She's not impressed. And in fact, she's getting crankier and crankier. And he describes it doesn't just end with the trains, it starts to come up all over the place. He says it was a great trip. They had their highlights and good moments, but the negative energy just ate him. And this is the bit that made the story stand out to me. He says, her constant negativity, oh, wow, it really made me hate her. And when I read that, I thought, that's amazing. It's a 3-year relationship, their first trip abroad. He's delivering everything that he thinks he needs to deliver, but he's hating her. It's a 4-letter word, starts with a H. 3 years in the relationship, it's pretty intense. So let's see what happens. He says how the trip continued, he did the best he could, and then when they got home at luggage collection, he decided to dump her. So he's dumped her, and then at, it seems, the luggage collection, she describes how she wished there'd been more intimacy on the holiday, on the trip. And that's really important. I'm going to come to this for sure. To that, he says, well, he wrote, how can I give her that when she is like this? So I'm going to probably just right up now instinctively throw out the first red stamp, because to say we're only going to be warm when someone's nice, we're only going to be loving when someone else gets kind, there's boundaries, true, but there's also this kind of race to the bottom. And I feel he was racing to the bottom. So let's condemn that behavior. Conditional, highly conditional love and affection, or patience, or intimacy. So he dumps her, and then to the horror of the internet, he also then ghosts her for good measure too. And he seems to have briefly achieved fame as like the internet's most hated ex-boyfriend for a short period of time. So what can we take away from this story? Well, the big standout to me is that at the very end, the girlfriend said she wanted more intimacy. Now, when people have a breakup, they don't usually raise something completely unprecedented at the breakup. They're usually going to raise something that's been there for a while And they've been raising it in increasingly creative, increasingly loud ways until at the breakup, it's just too much and it has to come up and end the relationship. So I'm going to guess intimacy was probably something for the girlfriend for a while. And if I wear my kind of counselor hat and I try to see the world through the eyes of the girlfriend, if I try to step away from the slice of reality that the boyfriend presents here and I try to see, well, what was it like for her to kind of be listened to, assessed and studied and then have a itinerary just delivered to her? Well, this trip's really kind of like, from the guy's point of view, I. There was no us in this. This trip got kind of thrown at her. And she wants intimacy, but he's delivering excellent logistics. These two things are not the same. She's looking for a loving companion, intimacy. He's looking to impress her with tactical, logistical genius. Not the same thing. He's almost like a tour guide with a whole lot of feelings, and she just wants someone to hold her hand and be present on the trip with her. Two totally different trips. And that kind of goes to what does holidays and travel even mean for us? When I say fly and flop, that can mean a million different things to lots of different people. When I talk to clients about travel, this might seem a little abstract, so I raise an example from Doctors John and Julie Gottman, who are famous for the Gottman method of couples therapy. They point out that money is never just money. If money was just numbers, we would never fight about money, because if a couple had a disagreement about money, they could take out calculators, do the division, the subtraction, the addition, and boom, problem solved. But if you're more than one day old, you probably have had an argument about money with a friend, with a parent, with a girlfriend, with a boyfriend, and you might have realized it's not about the math. It's because for each of us, money, it's not a number, it can mean anything. Power, respect, achievement, independence, freedom, opportunities. It could mean so many things, and the same for a holiday. So if our original poster's girlfriend had wanted a holiday where she was taken by the hand and shown what to do and pampered in a very kind of, let me take you by the hand and show you around kind of way, if she wanted a holiday where she could take no responsibility but just be a tourist, this might have been a great holiday for her. But if she was looking for a holiday where she could maybe reinvent herself when she's abroad, a holiday where she could break some rules, escape how she is in her hometown, if she was looking for a holiday where she could add new energy to their relationship, probably not, because this guy was fixated on his navigation app and looking out the window, he's not actually looking at her. If she was looking for intimacy, like a chance to be intimate away from the pressures and familiarity of home, then this trip totally missed the mark for her. And that's why when I said listening at the beginning, I really meant that. There's listening and then there's listening. There's listening to the words like an AI would, and then there's listening to the feelings. What is someone trying to achieve? Why do they want this holiday in the first place? And I love this story because it's short, but it spotlights something that a lot of us guys, I think, get wrong when it comes to traveling with our wives or our girlfriends. What does it mean to be a guy bringing our best self on a holiday? The original poster might seem wildly irrational to dump his girlfriend at the airport, and I will not attempt to justify that behavior at all. But it could be the behavior of someone who's super stressed, someone whose nervous system is in what's called flight or fight mode. The thing with male competencies and female competencies, but today we're looking at male competencies, is that when they're challenged, the part of the brain that lights up is the amygdala. This part of the brain that we share with crocodiles and real basic reptiles, the flight or fight part of our brain. It kept us safe when we had to spot patterns and dangers in the savannah or the jungle or the desert. Less helpful if we're in a plush Japanese hotel lobby and our partner's criticizing our map reading skills. This part of the brain will activate because it's going to a core of how we feel we should be as men. Same thing can happen to women for a female competency, but in this case it's a male competency. And when you've got the flight or fight, nervous response activated, it's a cocktail of adrenaline, it's cortisol, our heart rate starts to go up, and you know the feeling. You feel your eyesight get worse, because it does get worse. Your hearing diminishes, our problem-solving skills get worse, we are less creative, and our ability to empathize and be compassionate goes through the floor. So this is a great example of how I suddenly started to hate her. It could be that this guy is completely dysregulated. And it's kind of sad because it sounds like his girlfriend might have been quite regulated, if not bored, on the trip. And if, as social creatures that we are, if they held hands, they would have co-regulated. His nervous system would have slowed right on down. So that's just a little aside there. If you don't know what to do with your wife or your girlfriend and things are a bit stressful, just hold her hand. It is guaranteed to make a positive impact on your nervous systems. And I'll talk about that in a future episode because that's a whole story in itself. But for now, let's get back to this original poster. They said that their partner had said, hey, I'm just a girl. The internet turned that into a bit of a gender war thing. For me, that sounded kind of like a bit of a script that maybe she went to when she wasn't sure what to do. For men, if you have a husband or a boyfriend, you've got a young kid and the diaper needs changing and your partner's like, I gotta go poop. That's the script to kind of just like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, I'm getting out if I'm going to the bathroom for a few minutes. Or if your girlfriend or wife raises a kind of an intense conversation and you suddenly are like, oh, I need to go check my crypto account. That's kind of a similar thing. I mean, maybe we can talk about that in another episode later on. Like I said, we can go through this whole story and review some of the key behaviors. But there's one behavior that really stands out for me that deserves a green stamp. And you might think, I don't know any green stamps in this story. This is a horrible story. But there is this, and again, John and Julie Gottman, they are famous, like I said, for the Gottman method of marriage counseling. Their book, Fight Right, is a fantastic manual for how to be a better travel companion. And I recommend it to everyone. And I'll put it in my show notes below. But one of the things they point out is that you can measure a couple and how they communicate and statistically build out how often they attempt to repair a fallout or a disagreement. And that attempt to repair can be reciprocated or rejected by the partner. It's a big deal to do that. And couples who are able to repair, even if it's a really B-grade shitty repair, like, oh, let's go get a snack or just hold my hand, whatever it could be, if it kind of de-escalates the fight, it's a win and it's going to help that couple get stronger. I only count one such behavior in the story, and that's when the girlfriend says, I wanted more intimacy. Now, that happened after the breakup, so it's a bit post-mortem, but if it had been said earlier, for example, at Shinjuku train station, it would have been really useful because she's sharing her feelings and there would have been a much bigger opportunity for her boyfriend to maybe recalibrate how he's delivering this trip. When I read that, and I thought, oh, how could the girlfriend have said that to the guy who's being this hyper competent male sort of caricature of knowing everything on a trip? How could she say it without him being all defensive and uptight? Because if you've ever said something to your partner like, I don't think you're very intimate, they're going to be like, I'm very intimate, right? Because we're humans, we're defensive by nature. Dr. John and Julie Gottman have this really cool sentence structure, and you can look it up, and again, it'll be in my show notes, but if you look up an I feel statement, you can anchor your feelings in a statement about what you need. And that way, it's a little bit harder to get into an argument, but it says more about you, because you're able to say what you feel and what you need. So if you've ever tried telling a teenager, clean your room's always a mess, they're probably going to respond to the always and say something defensive like, well, it was clean last week. On the other hand, if you were to say, when I see your stuff all over the floor, it makes me feel like the house is out of control and that makes me feel really stressed. And I really need you to just clean the floor, please. It's not an attack on them, you're describing your feeling and what you need for your feeling to improve. She almost got it straight in this story. She almost got there by saying she needs intimacy. So if she had said, when I'm traveling and the person I'm with keeps looking at their phone or is obsessed with everything except me on the trip, I'm starting to feel pretty lonely and I really need you to show me some intimacy. Can you just look at me, hug me, hold my hand? It'd be a lot easier for the boyfriend to kind of figure it out. Even if she said something simple like, I'm starting to feel like a piece of furniture here. Can you hold my hand? it would have been great. On the flip side, he could have said something like, honey, I really want to get us to the hotel on time. And I know I'm really distracted right now by my navigation app, but when we get to the hotel, I'm all yours. You could have put a time frame on it, try to explain what's going on, and understand a bit more about what she wants and express that he understands what she's looking for. I'll just throw in here another concept from the Gottmans, which is really great. And it's a bit unrelated, but it's from literally Cold War negotiation strategy, zero-sum game type thing. But it's called the Rapaport principle. I'm not sure if I pronounced it right, but the idea is you need to be able to articulate someone else's argument to them, say the argument back to them in a way that they will say, yes, you actually understand what my problem here is. Because often we don't understand each other and we argue about things that we think the other person's talking about, but we kind of miss the point. So if he said to his girlfriend, okay, are you telling me that by being on my navigation app and being perfect at getting us around and trying to get directions every 5 minutes, I'm making you feel neglected? He's already won half the battle because he's able to show her that he can listen, not just listen to facts, but listen to feelings. And it would have put them all in a much better place than they wound up at the end, being ghosted and dumped at the airport and becoming the internet's most hated ex-boyfriend. So if you've enjoyed this, subscribe. I'm going to post up a Reddit story or two every week, go through some of the behaviors and tally up how everyone in the story did from a behavior point of view. In this story here, there's a few stamps I think we can throw out. There's definitely the ghosting. That's a red, rejected. The dumping at the airport, that's not classy. That is red and rejected. Saying what we need in a relationship at the very end, that's also probably pretty red and rejected. Talking about our feelings, green light, proceed, do more of that. That's definitely a continue thing. Beautiful grand gestures of love, like a surprise holiday, green, like that is amazing. Being very competent on a holiday, see, that's a challenging one, right? Because he could have probably been super competent, known tons of Japanese and the subway map, but done it in a way with empathy and understanding for what his girlfriend was looking for. So I'm not sure if I'm going to stamp that one a green or a red. But that's my video for today. Subscribe and I'll come back with more like this.